Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and I'm gonna go through some of the pickups that I got today really quick because I want to talk about the trade-in life cycle, especially when it comes to retro video games, and kind of how the hobby shifts every 7 years or so, and what I kind of see happening right now that I'm kind of getting back into the thick of it and I'm starting to find my collecting rhythm again. So I went to GameStop today to return a faulty console that they had sold me. And while I was there, I picked up a few interesting things. First, we have Raystorm Ray Crisis, the HD collection. I've bought and sold this game way too many times. I think it's gonna stay in my collection this time, like for sure. So I finally got this back on the Switch. Was glad to add that. I got a complete in-box copy of Thunder Force 2, which is brand new to me. I never had this in my collection, even in my old collection. I was never able to find a complete in-box copy of this game for some reason. And I was able to find a complete in-box copy at GameStop for like 19 bucks. So that wasn't bad at all. And I think the manual for this one is actually in pretty decent shape, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the manual on this is actually in pretty good shape, which I don't typically see for this game. So this was actually a pretty cool find right here. Then you have Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Darkness. This was a trade bait pickup. I don't typically collect Pokemon games, but I know Pokemon is still pretty popular, so this will come in handy when it comes time to do a trade. So I kind of picked that up for that. Then we have Splatoon on the NES. This is kind of like a run and gun shooter game. It seems very basic and kind of redundant, but it was a Sunsoft game, and that's what caught my eye. Whenever I see anything Sunsoft, I'm usually like prone to pick it up just because I know Sunsoft does pretty good stuff. So pick that up for the NES. We have The Nightmare on Elm Street, another NES pickup. This is actually way cleaner than my original copy. The label on that looks really good, so I'm pleased with this pickup. Then we have Spider-Man 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color. So these were a couple of pretty solid pickups as well for the Game Boy Color. And then we have Aerostar on the original Game Boy. This is another Sunsoft pickup. This is a very cool looking shoot 'em up for the original Game Boy. And there's a lot of shoot 'em ups on the original Game Boy, and a lot of them look really basic. For those of you who know, I used to have a game called Battle Unit Zeoth. I'm gonna get that game back. It's a cheap shoot 'em up. It's like a mech style shoot 'em up. Really cool game, very basic. But Aerostar to me seems like the Game Boy version of like, what's a intricate Super Nintendo shoot 'em up? I can't think of the name right now, but it's part of the LSD series. But this is a very cool shoot 'em up. And then last but not least, we have the Castlevania Double Pack, which was another really cool game. I was actually able to burn some points and use some coupons. So despite the price tags that you see on some of these, this is not what I paid for these games. And overall, I got a really solid deal, I think, on all of these games. All of them well below price charting, an average of 35 to 40% below price charting, which for me, being a collector, that is a pretty good deal. Now, I kind of want to talk about some of what I'm seeing in the the retro game collecting market. First off, we're approaching 7 years. Like this year is gonna fly by, and we're approaching 7 years since we've been removed from pandemic collecting. And I think it's safe to say that retro game collecting isn't cool anymore. It's not the sexy topic. It's not something that people really care to talk about on YouTube as much outside of the actual like diehard collectors. I don't think there's a lot of like people who like transient people who weren't really like in it to, into collecting really, like they were just making content around it. I think we've seen a lot of those people die off. I think a lot of people who maybe were collecting retro at one point, I think a lot of them have kind of like moved away from that as well. And I think that, they're probably focused on like modern games, or people have transitioned over to Pokemon. So I think you are seeing, oh, and then also life is happening, right? Like there's a lot of things happening outside of the world of video games. Like people are getting laid off left and right. People are strapped for cash. People are, in tight spots financially. And so a lot of people have, or people are just going through life changes. And so a lot of people have sold their collection. So they just really don't have much on their page to talk about or on their YouTube channel to talk about because they don't really have much of a collection to really kind of go over, and they're not collecting anymore just because of whatever their financial situation is. And I think this time that we're entering into, I think might be one of the best times for collectors of retro video games because I think we're going to see a healthy amount of games go back into the market. I think we're starting to see like games that were not as common are really becoming common. And while yes, you want to go find some stuff at a flea market, and yes, you want to go find some stuff at a garage sale, and yes, you want to do all that, a lot of these games that you're finding, like there's a lot of really good games, honestly, at GameStop. You know what I mean? Whether it's on their website or whether you're going into their store, because I think for the person who's not plugged into the retro community, like I know to people who follow retro gaming content on YouTube, I know to those people it might seem like everybody knows who like chase after the right price and like Phoenix resale and like, you know, retro rig. I know it might seem like there's a lot of people who know who those guys are, but the reality of it is that there's not like a lot of people do not know who those guys are. And so there's a lot of people out there who have collections of stuff that they are ready to get rid of, and they're not thinking, "Ooh, let me call Chase or Phoenix." They're walking that stuff right down to GameStop and they're selling it right there in the store. And I think we're going to see more and more of that happen. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be right there to clean it all up because, you could spend a lot of time, going from flea market to flea market, yard sale to yard sale, hoping to find that really, really rare and expensive game. But by the time you find it, you would have spent all that money in gas driving all over the place. And I think that's why even here in California, I will go and do the yard sale and flea market thing when it kind of falls in line with what I've got going on or when it makes sense because it's on my path. But I'm not gonna go out of my way to do those things just because they don't make financial sense, especially with where gas prices are. So I think the life cycle of where we're at within the hobby is, yeah, I think you're starting to see more and more people rotate out of it. And yeah, you might have some new people rotating back into it, but it's not as popularized as it once was. And so it doesn't have like the eyes and the attention of people like it did not too long ago. So, in my opinion, I think that this presents a really good opportunity for folks who want to grab games while they can, because if history, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And if there is going to be a time where, retro video games do make another resurgence, I shudder to think about what video game prices are going to be then when there's even less copies out there and it's even harder to find like good condition games. So for me this time around, I've really been hyper focused on getting things in the best condition that I can get them in. And I'm going to continue to do that as I build out this collection. But there's definitely a life cycle change happening, which means opportunity for collectors. If you're like if you're thinking about getting into video games to flip, I definitely wouldn't do that. I would say go get some Pokemon cards and flip that. Yeah, that would be your best bet. Flip that. Do not try to flip retro video games because you're going to lose your shirt. But let me know what you think about this rotation in the life cycle of video games. I'm interested to know your thoughts. I'll catch you guys in the next one. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.